All right, guys, this is going to be section 6 of Flip. Basically, what we're going to do here is we are going to make an exit that's going to allow us to go to different levels, and we're actually going to start making different levels. We're also going to make a fall marker so that if Flip falls off, we'll have a way to basically restart the layout. And we're going to add a few other odds and ends. Shouldn't be as long as the last one, though. So the first thing we're going to do is just make sure you are on your layout, and we're going to make an exit sprite. So just double click on the outside here, make a sprite, and we're going to call it exit. Insert it, click on the screen somewhere, go to the load folder, and then just find the exit in the flip folder. It should be labeled as exit right there. We shouldn't have to change any settings here, so we're just going to leave that. It is really important, though, that you are paying attention to what layer you're creating the objects on. So you can see here, I had my HUD layer selected, so I accidentally made it on the HUD layer. And this is going to be really huge later on because we're going to be doing stuff with making that layer global. And if you make stuff on there that shouldn't be there, it really, really can mess stuff up. So if you accidentally made your exit on the wrong layer, just go ahead and change the layer in the properties here to main. And then I'm going to go ahead and click on my main layer right now so that I don't accidentally make stuff on that layer again. And then I'm just going to scroll over here to the right and put my exit on. Another thing you can do is if you just like click on your layout once somewhere, you can just press Control minus to zoom out or Control plus to zoom in if you need to zoom in or out. That's the way I like to do it. So we got our exit on there. Now the exit won't work yet, but we're not going to code it until we actually get a level 2 on there. Okay, so what we need to do is we're going to make that level 2 right now. So what you're going to do is you're going to go up to the top in your project window here. You'll see this folder called layouts. We're going to right click it. We're going to add a layout. When you make a layout, you can either choose to add a new event sheet for it or just add the layout if it's going to use an event sheet you already have. Um, all of our levels are going to use ES Game, so we're going to just say add layout only. And then right away, you want to change some properties. So right now, we want to label it, and we're going to call it level with a capital L, and then the number 2 with no spaces. It's very important you are consistent in the way you label your levels because the way we code it is going to depend on these all being labeled in a consistent manner. Okay, so if you want to look at the way I'm labeling them, this is the way I'm going to code it. Level with a capital L, no spaces, and then the number of the level. That's how we're going to name all of our levels. So if you did yours differently, then you have to be consistent with that. So either change yours to look like mine, or if you did like lowercase l, then make this a lowercase l. If you put an empty space in there, then you have to put an empty space in, all of them. Okay, but they've got to all match up. Next on our level 2, we're going to change a couple properties here. So for event sheet, since we didn't add one, it doesn't give us one. So the event sheet's where it's going to read all the code. So a really common mistake is people will make a new level, they'll put all the objects on there and then they run it and it doesn't work. The reason why it doesn't work is because it sometimes has the wrong event sheet or it doesn't have an event sheet. So it's really important up here in the properties to choose ES game. And then for size, we're going to go 3600 by 720. Now, just so that you guys know, anytime you're doing these main games, like they don't have to be like identical to the presentation or identical to the video. Like, I encourage you guys to change them up, have fun with them, make the levels however you want. So if you want to make your level size really different, maybe you want to do a vertical level that's really tall, like that's totally fine. Just the background won't look great with it, but it's not anything I would dock you points for. So yeah, if you want to have more fun, or if you want the level to be like crazy long and like have it 10,000 pixels long or something, you totally could do that. Okay. So just for the example, I'm doing 3600 by 720, but you can make it whatever you want. Then we're going to go to our layers window and we want to have the exact same layers as level 1. So what I like to do is I just like to right click in here and just do add layer to top. And I'm just going to do that 3 more times so I have 4 total layers here. Okay. Now it's really important to understand that when you make a new layer, there's a property here called transparent, and it automatically makes new layers transparent, which basically means that layer is like clear. You can see through it. But that layer 0 that's on the bottom is not transparent, and that's what gives it this white box behind it. So if I uncheck that, you see it just turns gray because they're all transparent now and we can see through all of them. The reason why this is significant is because a really common mistake will be something like this. Let me just jump to level 1 quick. You don't have to do this. But let's say I accidentally made my HUD layer not transparent. So it looks like there's nothing on my layout. And like when people try to drag an object on, like it looks like the object like disappears. So you can see as I put that on there, it just disappears. Um, and it's not that it's not there, it's just that the HUD layer isn't transparent, so it's putting this big HUD layer white box over everything. So anytime you get that issue, just check all of your layers and make sure that they are all transparent basically. Okay. The general rule is any layer that isn't the very bottom layer should always be transparent. And if you want to be really safe, like it doesn't really matter if the bottom layer is transparent, like that can be transparent. It's not going to hurt anything as long as you put an actual background on your level. It doesn't really matter that that white isn't there. Okay. The main reason the white is there, to be honest, is just for editing. So it's just easier to see stuff. The white, just has more contrast than this gray does. And it helps you to clearly see where the layout is and where the layout isn't. So that's pretty much all that that is for. So we're going to take this, put transparent off on that. Okay. So let's go ahead and label all of our layers. So layer 0 on the bottom is going to be background. I just like to call it BG for short. But label it however you did on level 1. Okay, so just make sure it's all identical. So then after that, I believe this is the blocks layer. So I'm just right clicking it, rename. We'll call it blocks. And then we have the main layer, right click, rename main. And then layer 3 on top is the HUD layer. A HUD layer is the most important one that you label correctly because we're going to make that layer global in a little bit. And it's basically, it has to be labeled exactly the same for the global property to transfer from layer to layer. Okay. So let's see, we got that. Then we have to do our parallaxing. So remember that we changed the way that these scroll. So the HUD layer, I'm going to make the parallax 0, 0. Okay. The background, I'm going to make 75, 75. So just find that parallax property on the left side. 75, comma 75. Okay, and then main and block should just be at 100. Those should be full, but the HUD and background were different because we want them to scroll differently. Then we're going to click on the background layer and we're going to put a new background object on here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click on my layout really quick, just single click it. I'm just going to do Control minus and zoom out a bit so I can get a good handle on the stage a little bit more. I just zoomed out a little bit. All right, so background layer selected, double click to make a new object. In the presentation, they just tell you to make like a background object, but they don't tell you if it's a sprite or if it's something else. It's actually going to be a tiled background. So I'm going to click on tiled background and I'm going to name it level 2BG. You can label it however you want. And I'm going to click on the screen to put it on. And I'm going to click this load folder up here in the upper left, and there should actually be something in here called level 2 background specifically. I don't really have to change any of the settings for this, so I can just X out that window, and I've got my background here. Now you could drag it into the corner and try to scroll it, but to me it's easier just to type in the coordinates and everything. So if I have it highlighted, just go to position and do 0, 0. And then for size, do 3600 by 720 or whatever the size of your layout is. So if you did a different size than me, just type in whatever size your layout is here. Now, if you do this step and it doesn't look like mine and it like stretches and looks really funny, it means you made a sprite instead of a tiled background. Also, if you typed in 0, 0 and the position wasn't correct, that also means you made it a sprite. So a tiled background, basically, it's meant to basically repeat or clone the object rather than stretch the pixels. And its default origin is upper left. It actually, you're not even allowed to edit the origin on a tiled background. That's why putting the position at 0, 0 works, because the origin is up here in the corner. So make sure if you made that as a sprite, you can't really edit it and fix it. You have to delete it and make a completely new object and do a tiled background. So just make sure that that's a tiled background. Once you have it set like this, go ahead and lock your background down and we should be good to go. Then what we're going to do is we're going to go to level 1. Now it's really important you're on level 1 for this. What we're going to do is we are going to take this HUD layer and we're going to make it global. And what that means is anything that is on level 1's HUD layer will be transferred to any other level that has that same HUD layer with the same name. So basically, we know we want the lives, ammo, and score to be the same on every single level. So we don't want to have to re-put them on there. So what you're going to do is click on the HUD layer, and then in the upper left, there's a word global right here. We're going to change that to yes. Okay. Then we're going to click on each individual text object, and there's also a global option for each of those as a checkbox. So we're going to check all of 3 text objects and make them global. Okay, just like that. Do not do this for any other object in the game. I've had some people do it on Flip before, and it actually creates a pretty disastrous outcome. Um, because basically every time you go to a new layout, you end up with multiple flips, and you don't want that. So what this global means now is if I go to level 2, you'll see that I didn't put this here, but it automatically appeared here. So if you want to edit any of these, edit it from level 1 because that's your base level that the global was created on. Okay, so we've got that HUD layer there, and it's all global now. Okay, now it's really important that you do not make anything else on the HUD layer on a different level. And I'll show you why. So let me just show you an example. So don't actually do this, but let's say I have my HUD layer selected, right? And let's say because you are going to want to put flip on this level. Let's say I put flip here. Watch what happens on level 1. It created another flip there in the same spot, and I don't want that. Because it's global, it's sharing that with other levels. So you have to be really, really careful. If you accidentally make something on the wrong layer and it's on the HUD layer, it's going to like really mess stuff up. So like, and you can see Flip disappeared here when I deleted him on level 1. And here's the other bad part, okay? Let's say I make Flip here on the wrong layer and I notice it and I say, oh, I'm just going to switch him to the main layer. Well, what happens is he disappears because it was on a global layer. So instead of keeping him here, it actually just deletes him and then I have to redo it. This can be really problematic because I've had people design their entire layout with like platforms and everything all on the HUD layer. The two really terrible things that happen are one, if they change the layer, it all gets deleted and they have to completely remake the level. But then the other issue is it puts all of those blocks and stuff on this level, and then it messes everything up. Because you can see on level 2, even though I changed his layer and got rid of him, he still exists on level 1. So he's still here and I have to physically delete him. So if I put a bunch of platforms and stuff, it's going to completely mess up my level 1. I'm going to lose a whole bunch of time. So it's really important at this point forward, now that your HUD layer is global, do not touch that layer. Don't put anything on it. So what we're going to do at this point is we are actually going to start designing out our level 2. So just avoid the HUD layer. Don't even click on it. Don't put anything there. If you want to lock it down, like, yeah, locking it might be a good idea. Like, just don't do anything on that layer. Okay. So we're going to start on the blocks layer. And we're going to start by doing our ground and our platforms. Now, what I'm going to do for the ground is I'm going to click on level 2, and we're going to get our grid going because for ground and platforms, we should have the grid. And I believe the grid size was 572 by 60 for the ground. So I'm going to do that, 572 comma 60. Okay, put that on. And then on the right side here, I can just pull a ground from my object types folder and pull that on. Now what we're going to do for the ground is we're going to create a different sprite for it, but we're going to do it as an animation frame in here instead of making a whole new object. This is very similar to how we did it in the breakout game, if you remember doing that. So we're going to double click on our ground. In this animation frame window here, I'm going to right click and add a new empty frame. I'm going to click on this frame one that's empty. Click the folder to load a new image. There should be a red one called castle floor. Might be called dungeon floor or something different, but just, yeah, get the red floor. Okay. Now, if I were to leave it like this, any gray floor in the game would turn red because this is programmed to animate. It's an animation, right? So if we want to use these independently, just as separate objects, we have to click on the animation in the upper right here, go down to the properties and just change the speed to 0. That means that it just won't animate, and whatever frame it is, it's just going to stay on that frame. Now the other thing is we have to do the origin. So you can see here the origin is bottom left, but on this new frame it takes that the default origin of middle. So I could either right click here and just quick assign it to bottom left, Or the other way you could do it is you could click on that first frame. Since that origin's already correct, you could just right click and apply to all animations. They're both just as fast, so you can do it either way. So I've got the ground, then I'm going to click on it, go into my properties here in the lower left, and I'm going to change the frame to 1. Then I can just hold control and copy this. Um, so you can decide how much ground you want to put on here. I'm not going to put very much. I'm just going to put like a little bit of ground on each end. I'm going to have a big hole in the middle because we're going to be doing stuff with the fall marker so that flip can fall and actually get destroyed. So you can design your ground and put it wherever you want, but make sure there are at least some holes where flip could fall through. Okay. Um, at this time, just finish your ground. You can pause the video if you need to. And then when you're ready to move on the platforms, go ahead and click play again. So I'm going to go ahead and do the platforms now. And we're going to change the grid size. I believe it was 55 by 40. And then I'm going to just grab a platform, and I'm still on the blocks layer. It's really important that these don't end up on the HUD layer, right? So I'm going to go back to platform. I have the blocks layer highlighted. I'm going to make the first one. I'm going to confirm that it is on the blocks layer. Yep. And then I'm going to hold control, and I'm just going to grab a couple of these out. And what I like to do is I might like to make a little section of 4 like this, or however long you want it. And then if I go out here in the outer gray area, I can drag a rectangle and highlight a bunch of them. And then if I hold control with that whole group highlighted, I can then spawn that whole group out, and it goes a lot faster. You know, and then maybe I want to put like a little secret area down here that he possibly could go. You know, something like that. Maybe I want to make an additional area up here where I want to put like a bunch of bananas or something as a bonus. Okay. So once you have your ground and your platform set, you can go ahead and turn your grid stuff off because I don't think we'll need that anymore. Now that you have the ground and platforms in, everything else is going to be main layer. So go ahead and highlight the main layer, and then we can start putting stuff on the main layer. And I'm just going to double check. I'm really paranoid now. I'll tell you guys a secret. This is my second time doing the video because the first time I did it, I created the whole level on the HUD layer and it messed up everything so bad it would have taken me too long to fix it. And I didn't want you guys following along with me and making everything on the HUD layer. So that's why I'm pretty adamant about staying away from the HUD layer here. Okay, so I'm on the main layer. Now we can start putting the rest of our objects. So you can do this at your own pace, but basically you're going to build the level. The main requirements, let's do these first. You have to have flip on here. So we're going to get flip on the left side. We have to have an exit. So I'm going to put the exit somewhere on the right side. Okay, and I am on the main layer. Okay, we have to have at least the boundaries on the outside. So you want to make sure you have the boundaries on both sides. Remember, if I'm grading your game, I'm going to try to escape your levels. I'm going to try to do things I'm not supposed to be able to do. And it's your job as the programmer to prevent those things, right? So make sure that these boundaries are super tall so I can't jump over, or you can put a ceiling on your game if you want to do that. So I've got that. And then you can decide how much ammo, bananas, knights, but you want to have at least one instance of each one. So I'll put some ammo there at the beginning. We'll just throw an ammo down here. We'll just randomly toss a few on some random spots. I'm going to randomly put some bananas down. You guys can obviously take your time and design this a little bit better. I'm just going quick for the sake of the video, just so that I can say I have an instance of each thing. You do also have to put the coconut on your layout. So any projectiles, they have to exist on the layout. So the coconut, we're just going to put off screen down there, but that does need to be there. And then anytime you put a knight down, you have to make sure you put the edge markers or the boundaries down for him. So I think it's the yellow edge markers here. Otherwise, he's just going to like walk off the screen, or he's going to just walk in one direction. So we need to make sure we get these edge markers here so he can do that. So you decide how many, characters and things you want to put on here. I'm just going to keep designing mine. But yeah, just go ahead at this point if you haven't yet. Just design your level, pause the video, whatever. And then when you come back, if I'm still building my level or whatever, just fast forward till it looks like I'm doing something new. So I've got all of that. I've got flip on there. I've got bananas. I've got ammo. Yep, I think we're good. I'm just gonna I kind of want this to be a fun area with a bunch of bananas up here. And later on, like one of the additional things you could do is like make a one up. Like this could be a good area. You could do secret areas to do like one ups and bonus things, whatever. All right. So my bananas aren't lined up really good. Technically, if you want your bananas to look really good, I think I showed you in a previous video that you could use the grid for that just to make sure they're lined up. That probably isn't the worst idea. But like I said, I'm going quick. But I think I'm to the point where my level looks okay. And I'm being paranoid again, but yes, this stuff is all on the correct layer, so that's good. Go to level 1, make sure there's no surprises. Like I said, anything on level 2 that you put on the HUD layer is going to appear on level 1, and it's going to kind of create a mess for you. Okay. All right. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to make the fall marker. So we're going to be on the main layer. Just double check that you're on that. Double click out here to make a new object. It's going to be a sprite. We're going to call it fall marker. Basically, it's just going to be something we can collide with all off screen so that we can code what happens if flip falls off. So we insert, click on the screen. This is just like the edge and the boundary. It's just going to be a solid object. I'm just going to make mine red. Pick a color you haven't used before so it's easy to tell the difference between your objects. Okay, and then I'll actually put this coconut on top. So basically, you just want this marker to like stretch all the way across the bottom. In the presentation, they give you a specific size and like number to type in for position, but that doesn't really matter. It just has to be long enough to encompass the whole thing. And I make it longer than I need to just to make sure there's no shenanigans that Flip can't like somehow miss it. So the idea is Flip is going to fall off, and then when he collides with this, we're just going to program to do like a restart layout, subtract one from lives type of thing. Now, where you put this is kind of important because right now, if we leave it here, Flip's going to touch it there, and it might look awkward like restarting the layout with Flip not even falling off all the way yet. He's still like hovering up above. So what I like to do is place Flip so his entire body is underneath the layout, and then I can just position this at the bottom of his feet. Then I know that Flip has to at least fall this far to hit it, and then that's when the layout will restart. And I do want to make sure the boundary extends all the way, just to make sure that there's no possible way that like Flip can't escape out the side, because you don't want to ever have a chance that the player could end up in a situation where it doesn't restart. All right, so in terms of layout, I think we're all good, but we should go back to level 1, especially if yours has a hole in it. Mine has a hole in it. Need to make sure we put a fall marker on level 1. And once again, don't do it on the HUD layer. I'm going to go main layer first, put the fall marker down, and I'll just throw one on there too. I'll put that coconut on top. I mean, it could be underneath the fall marker. It doesn't matter. I just like to be able to see all my objects, so I didn't want to have that interfering. But yeah, get a fall marker on level 1 unless you can't fall through the bottom. If you did something with a complete solid ground, then you would probably be okay. All right, so now I think we are ready to go to the event sheet. So go to your ES game, minimize all the groups you're not using so it doesn't look too complicated. We're going to start with the global variable to track our levels. So we're going to start to get our level system in so we can go from level to level by touching the exit. So just right click down here, add a global variable called level, have it be 1 to start, so it's going to be a number and then 1. So we've got that there. Okay, then we're going to go into the flip combat and collisions group, so you can open that up, scroll all the way down to the bottom. We're going to add a new event to it, and we're going to do flip on collision with exit. We're going to do on collision with another object. We're going to choose the exit. Now, a lot of you would think that we would touch the exit and we would just tell it to go to level 2, which that's great for going from level 1 to 2. But the problem is we're going to use the same exit on every level. And yes, we could program it. We could do a separate object on each level that specifically takes you to the next one, but that's not very efficient, right? So we want to just use the one object if possible, and there's a way we can code this one object to work. And this is why the labeling of your level names is really important, okay? So the first thing we're going to do is when we hit the exit, we're going to add an action, and we're going to do system, and we're going to do add to. So anytime you're dealing with a global variable, we're going to add 1 to our level variable is what we want to do. All global variables under system commands. So we're going to do add to. We're going to click here and do level and then 1. So if I'm on level 1, we can see that the level variable starts at 1. So now when I touch the level, it's going to make that level variable 2. It's going to add 1 to it. Then what we need to do is we need to have it go to the proper layout, right? So we're going to add an action. We're going to do system, and then the command is called go to layout. However, there's 3 options here. So go to layout means I would choose a specific layout to go to, which for this instance, I don't want to do that because the layout the exit's going to use is going to change depending on what level I'm on. So we're going to go to layout by name, and this allows me to type it in. So we've got the red quotation marks here to type in a string. So we want it to read the specific word of the level we want to go to. All of our levels are going to start with the word level with a capital L. So I'm going to type that in. I'm going to do, I want to go to the layout called level with a capital L, and I'm going to always want to do that for any level. But then I want it to go to the specific level number depending on where I'm at, right? So I go outside the string. I'm going to do Shift 7 to do an and symbol. And then I'm going to type in the word level without quotation marks, and it should come up with the level global variable. And it'll have the green globe there. That's how you can tell it's a global variable. Okay. So now when I touch the exit, it's going to take me to the layout called level with a capital L, no spaces, and then the whatever number my level variable is at. So as long as you label this property, level capital L, no space, and then the number of the level, this should work. So to kind of lay it out for you, my level variable starts at 1, I'm on level 1, okay? On level 1, I touch the exit, it adds 1 to the variable, so it becomes 2, and then it takes me to the level called level and 2, so it's going to do level 2, so then it's going to take me to this. And then we're going to make level 3 here in just a little bit. So then when I touch the exit on level 2, the variable is going to be at 2 already. It's going to add 1 and become 3, and then take me to level and 3, so level 3. Hopefully that makes sense, okay? Um, so we got that part on. Now we're going to do the fall marker. So let's just add another event to the flip combat collisions group. We're going to do flip on collision with another object. We're going to choose the fall marker. And essentially this is really easy. We just want to subtract 1 from lives and restart the layout. So I'm going to add an action. Um, lives is a global variable, so we do system subtract from lives and then 1. And then we're going to do a system restart. System restart. And that's it. So now the fall marker should work and the exit should work. So we can go ahead and test that really quick. So let's go to level 1 and make sure. So first I'm going to try to take the exit to level 2. You can test your game out as well. Hopefully it works. So right now my level variable is 1. I touch it, it becomes 2 and takes me to level 2. Okay. And then if I had an exit on here, it wouldn't work because it's going to try to take me to level 3, but I haven't created level 3 yet. So it just won't do anything. And then here, if I fall off, he hits the fall marker and restarts, and you can see my lives, they go from 3 to 2 and then 2 to 1. Now the issue we have is when my lives are 0 and I die, it's just going to go negative right now because we haven't programmed the game over scenario, and that won't come till either section 7 or 8. Okay, so for now we're good. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to make a new enemy. And it's going to be like an archer that's going to shoot at you. So we're going to go and do this all on level 2. Once again, make sure you're on the main layer. I can't stress that enough. Don't do this on the HUD layer. Okay. I'm going to double click up here. I'm going to add a sprite, and it's going to be called Archer. Insert. This is going to be a single frame image again, so I'm just going to click the folder in the upper left to find the Archer. There he is. Okay, now the Archer, we do have to do a little bit of editing in here. So what we're going to do is we want to make an image point on him. So I'm going to zoom in here a little bit. So if I go to origin, we do want to keep the origin in the center because we want him to rotate off that center point. But we want to put an image point on the tip because we want the arrow to come out of the tip of it, not the center of it. So here on the left side, this is just like how we did it for flip shoot animations. You might remember this. So I right click over here in the origin window and I do add new image point. I got image point 1, and I'm just going to click the tip of the arrow with that. Okay. If you don't see the origin over here, it means you didn't click on this first. You have to click on this little image point editor here. Okay. Then we can close that. I've got my archer here, so we'll just have him floating around up here. Then we need to give him a behavior. So go to behaviors, add new behavior, and we're going to give him a turret behavior. Once again, if you don't want to look for it, just type in turret up here and it'll pop up. So a turret is just like it sounds. It's basically like a tank turret where it rotates on an axis and then it's programmed to have settings where it'll shoot objects at you and rotate and target things. That's basically what it does. So we've got turret behavior on that. Once you get turret behavior on, you're going to get access to some new properties down here. So with your archer selected, go to properties, find the turret section here. We're going to change the range to 1000. What the range is how many pixels away from the object it can start to detect targets. So we want it to detect targets from 1000 pixels away. Rate of fire is how often in seconds it will shoot. So we're going to change it to 5. That means it's going to shoot 1 bullet every 5 seconds. The lower you make the number, the faster it'll shoot. Okay. Um, we are going to turn this predictive aim on. What predictive aim does is the moment it shoots, it actually predicts where you will be based on your current movement and shoot in front of you rather than shoot right at you. So predictive aim is actually makes it more, it's like a higher difficulty level, we would say, for the level, right? Um, if you turn predictive aim off, basically like wherever your character, like the coordinate that your character is the moment it shoots at that coordinate regardless of if you're moving or not. So it's way easier to dodge because it's usually going to shoot behind you. So, and you could customize this. Like if I put multiple archers out here, you could have some with predictive aim on, some could have it off, some could have a faster rate of fire, some could have a slower rate of fire. So all of these settings I'm giving you, this is just like a base starting point, but you can edit all this however you want. You can make your levels easier, more difficult. That's totally up to you. Okay. And then projectile speed, we're doing 800. But once again, if you want to change that later or have some with slower or faster projectile speed, that's totally up to you. Okay. All right. So now that we have the archer, we need to have a projectile for it to shoot. So we're going to go, somewhere by where your coconut is, just double click out here. We're going to make another sprite, and this is going to be the actual arrow that's going to shoot. Insert that, click on the screen, um, click the folder. It's just a single frame. We're going to grab the arrow object here. Um, the arrow, I don't think needs any crazy settings done to it in here. I'm just going to double check my notes here. Nope, I think we're good. So you can just leave that arrow as is. That should be fine. So we'll close that window. And then in the properties, we need to add a behavior to the arrow, and it needs bullet behavior, just like the coconut. So we're going to add a behavior. You can type in bullet if you don't want to look for it. And then for the bullet, we just want to change the speed to 800 because that's what we had it set on the turret as well. And the rest of that I think should be good for now. So now I think we're ready to code this guy. So we're going to go to our ES game. Let's minimize the combat collisions group. We're going to right click down here and we're going to make a new group. So we're going to add a new group, and this is going to be like an archer group. So if you just want to call it archer, I think the presentation tells you to make it like archer arrow, something like that, but just however you want to label that. Okay, so I've got my archer group. And basically there's a couple things we have to do. We have to tell the archer like who to target. We have to tell it when it should be targeting, when it shouldn't be targeting, things like that. So let's add a new event to the archer arrow group. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to test if the archer is on screen. So we're going to do archer and then is on screen. If you just type is on, it should pop up. Okay. And then basically, when it's on screen, we're going to have it target flip, but we're not going to make it immediate. We're going to have him wait just a second so that it gives, just a little bit of time before he starts targeting you. So I'm going to add an action. We're going to do a system wait. We're going to wait 1 second. And then we're going to add another action. And then we're going to go archer. And then what we're going to do is I'm just going to type in the word turret, and it'll give me all the turret commands. And there are two options here for getting the target. We can either acquire target or we can add object to target. Now there's a big difference between the two. What acquire target means is in that moment it will acquire the target one time, And if it ever loses that target, it won't reacquire it. Whereas if you give it add object to target, it means anytime that it can target it, it will continue to try to target that object. So that's what we want to do is add object to target, and then we're going to choose flip. So basically, if the archer is on screen, so basically if the player can see it, it's going to wait a second and then target flip. Okay. Now it's not actually going to shoot yet. All that's going to happen when it targets it, and I can maybe run level 2 and show you here. So we'll run it. So you can see I got within the 1,000 pixel range, and you can see it targets him and it's kind of looking at him and it will follow flip. But you have to actually program it and tell it what to shoot. So its rate of fire is triggering. Like every 5 seconds, it is attempting to shoot, but we haven't told it what to shoot and are giving it that object. So it's not actually shooting anything, but it is targeting. Okay, so that's good. That's what it should be doing. So we're going to go back on here. Okay. Um, so the other thing that we want to happen is we don't want the potential of turrets targeting you when you can't see them. So basically, we're going to add another event to the archer arrow group. And basically, we want to say if the archer is not on screen, we want it to not target flip. So I'm going to go archer. We're going to say is on screen again because there's no option to say not on screen. So we're going to say is on screen, but then you're going to right click it and you're going to invert it. So this basically means if the archer is not on screen. Okay. And then we're just going to add an action for the archer and we're going to do clear targets. So then it will stop targeting flip. Now make sure these two events should be even with each other. They're both just events in the archer group. I have a lot of people that for some reason they make this a sub event of this one and then this one doesn't work properly. So make sure it looks just like mine. They're even. They're both just events in the archer group. They're not sub events of each other. Okay. Um, Now to make the archer shoot, we add a new event in the group. We're going to do archer and we're going to do the command on shoot. Okay, and then on shoot, this is what the rate of fire will trigger. So every 5 seconds, this on shoot triggers. We're going to just have it spawn an arrow. So we're going to add an action for the archer. We're going to spawn another object. We're going to spawn an arrow. We're going to spawn it on layer 2 because layer 2 is the main layer. And we're going to do image point 1. Remember, we created that image point 1 on the tip of the arrow, so that comes out from that point. Okay, so when it shoots now, it is going to shoot an arrow. And then we have to do some arrow collisions now. So I'm going to add another event here. And I'm going to do arrow on collision with another object. Let's say when it collides with the platform. Where's my platform? There it is. Whoops. Platform. So when arrow on collision with platform, I want to do arrow destroy. Now, I don't think the presentation has you do it, but I think it's nice if it gets destroyed from the ground too. So what I could do is I could take this event by the green arrow. I could just right click it and copy it. And I could right click it in the same spot and paste. And then all I have to do, because it just says arrow on collision, arrow destroy, if I just right click where the platform is, I can replace the object and I can replace the platform with the ground. So if there's other things you'd want to destroy the arrow, you could do that same thing and copy it and then just paste like that. Okay. The other thing too is we don't want arrows like flying around off screen doing stuff. So we're going to do like an event like this. So we're going to do arrow is not on screen. So you could copy this and then replace the archer with the arrow. I'll just make it again. So I'll add a new event to the group. I'll do arrow is on screen. I'm going to right click the on screen and invert it. So now it says arrow is not on screen. And then I'm going to do arrow destroy. So maybe I'll just control, click and drag and copy that arrow destroy down. Okay. Next, we need to make it so the arrows can actually hurt Flip. And we're going to make it so that Flip doesn't just die from one arrow. So we're going to kind of give him like hit points for just arrows. So we're going to make an instance variable for Flip. So I'm going to go to my level 2 layout. I'm going to click on Flip once. And I'm going to go and add an instance variable. So just a reminder, instance variables, it's like a global variable, but it's only attached to that object. So this is a variable that will be tied specifically to just this instance of Flip. Okay. So I'm going to add a new instance variable. I'm going to call it arrow hits. and it's going to be 2. So we're going to say Flip can take 2 hits before he dies. You can change that to whatever you want. If you want to give him more hits or something, you could do that. I know I've had some kids do levels that they want to be really difficult where the arrows shoot like super fast. So maybe they shoot crazy fast, but then Flip gets like 10 arrow hits or something because he's more likely to get hit. You could do that. Okay, so I've got that on there. We're almost done, by the way. I think we're just going to finish up this arrow stuff and then we'll be done with the section, okay? So now let's do arrow on collision with Flip, and we'll just keep that. Well, okay. So it's up to you. If you want this to be in the archer arrow group, if that makes more sense because it is the arrow hitting Flip, or since it is technically a Flip collision, you could put it in there. But I'm just going to keep all the arrow stuff together, I think. So I'm going to put it down here. So I'm going to do arrow on collision with another object, and we're going to say with Flip. Okay. We're going to do a couple things here right away. We're going to do Flip. And we're going to do something called set vector y. This is the same thing that we did on the knight. So if you remember on the knight, we did set vector y to negative 300 and it made them bounce upward. Well, with the arrow, we're going to do set vector y to positive 200. And what this does is it's actually going to lower Flip a little bit. So basically, if you jump in the air and get hit with the arrow, it's going to kind of push you down a little bit. And this can add a little bit of difficulty to the game because like if you're trying to jump over a pit and the arrow shoots you, it's going to push you down into the pit. So it's kind of a nice little touch there that he wouldn't just like fly through the arrow. The arrow's actually doing something to Flip. So that's what that vector y to 200 is going to do. And then we just need to subtract from his arrow hit variable. So to subtract from arrow hit, since it's an instance variable on Flip, we have to add an action, but we start with Flip because it's his variable. So we click on Flip, and then we can do subtract from, and then arrow hits, and then 1. Okay. Then what we have to do is we have to tell it that if his arrow hits is 0, that we have to restart the layout. So this is gonna be an actual sub event. So on this arrow on collision with Flip, right click where that green arrow is, add a sub event. Okay, and then we're going to say if arrow hits equals 0. So to compare arrow hits, we have to click on Flip, compare instance variable, and we want to know if arrow hits equals 0. Okay, so if Flip's arrow hits equals 0 after getting hit, then we're going to subtract 1 from lives and restart layout. So I'm going to do Flip, subtract from, or sorry, it's not Flip, sorry, it's a global variable. Add action, so it's system, subtract from lives 1. Okay, and then we're going to do a system restart layout. And these are both actions right there. Okay, so it should look like this. So if you did this correctly, the arrow hits Flip, sets his vector y, subtracts 1 from arrow hits. Then as a sub event, if his arrow hits is 0, it'll subtract 1 from lives and restart. And because arrow hits is an instance variable, when it restarts, it creates a new instance of Flip and the instance variable resets. Okay, because some of you might ask, like, why can't arrow hits just be a global variable? Well, if arrow hits was global, if it hit 0, it wouldn't reset when it restarts. So it would just stay 0 and then it would just like constantly loop a game over. So you could still code it that way. You would just have to like, reset the variable before it restarts. But this just makes more sense to do an instance variable. Okay. All right. So then the last thing we're going to do is on level 2, just go ahead and copy more instances of archers where you want to put them. And then basically all we're going to do after that is we're going to make level 3. And you can make level 3 on your own. Now, remember when we made level 2, we had to like make all these layers, make sure they're all labeled, do all the parallaxing and all that, right? And we had to like put all these objects and make sure they weren't on the HUD and all of that. So when you start level 3, you can do it the same way. But if you want a really nice shortcut, here's what I would do. Level 2's got everything. It's got like the right settings and stuff. We just want to change it for level 3, right? So if you take level 2, you can right click it and you can just duplicate it. So if you just duplicate it and look at that, it picked up on our pattern and it automatically labeled it correctly for us. So now I've got level 3. Now when you double click it, it's going to look identical. So the first thing I recommend you do is let's unlock the background layer. Let's get this off of here and let's get the level 3 background on. So let's double click, let's make a new tiled background. and you'd call it level 3 background. I forgot to label mine, so I'll name it in a minute. Go ahead and load, and I think there's a level 3 background in here. So level 3 background, perfect. Okay, and then we're just going to go over here, and I'm going to change the name because I forgot to do that. So I'm going to call it level 3 BG. I'm going to set the position to 0, 0. Okay, and I'm going to set the size. So this right now is 3600 by 720, but maybe I'm going to make my layout 4200. So I'm going to do 4200 by 720. So you can make the layout size whatever you want. I'll do 4200 by 720 so it just looks different. So now when I go between level 2 and level 3, I can at least tell the backgrounds are changing. And then level 3, now I just simply go and edit everything rather than make it from scratch. So let's say I want to do 4200 here. Okay. Um, Then what you can do is you can probably leave flip there, assuming that's where you want him to start. You've got your boundaries and everything set. Your HUD's already there. So like this is perfect. So now it's just a matter of you can just take your objects and move them around. So I'm not going to sit there and do this for this demonstration. I will for sure put like this over though. We'll put that there at the end. But so my level 3 is going to look pretty identical, but I want you to change yours quite a bit. So just take time and just move your objects around. If you want to delete objects off and then re-add them, you could totally do that. I would relock your background down. But now you're level 3. That was like instant. It was super fast. It's all there. Now you just go in and do the editing. So go ahead and finish your level 3, and then that will finish up this section.